I am going to let Rich and Cheryl introduce themselves. I mean, I could, but I'm sure they can do a much better job of it than I can. But we do want to thank them for being here, and we really just want to. The intention behind doing this employer conversation was hearing how are employers involved with bridges and ICAPS. How is it benefiting them? How does their involvement benefit the program? I mean, all those kinds of parts and pieces. So we're going to keep this fairly short. As some of you may have heard, Cheryl is in LA on the West Coast, so I think I'm doing my time zones correctly. It's 6:30 out there. Maybe it's 7:30, but
7:30.
oh, okay, even better. I was like, oh, she's good. So, Rich, I will let you take it away.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rich Dominguez. I'm the Executive Director for Literacy Chicago. We do adult educational programs ranging from adult basic literacy to ESL, and most importantly, our Bridge and ICAPS programming. I'd like to introduce my friend and colleague and business partner, Sheryl Morris. So Sheryl, want to do your little introduction?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Rich. Good morning, everyone. Sheryl Morris. I'm the Executive Director for UHCHI here, Chicago Hospitality Institute. We are a very new 501c3 workforce development organization born out of UHCHI here Local 1 Union in partnership with more than 50 hotels and event venues like United Center, Wrigley. A new partner is actually guaranteed rate field for the White Sox. But we have we're building our brand in the culinary world right now. We are the first of its kind for the state of Illinois to become a certified occupation or registered U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeship for chef de partie, only second to Los Angeles. I'm actually in LA, as Angela mentioned, for an amazing national grant that we're a part of that is for critical job sectors. And so we are excited to be a part of this work, and I'm grateful to be a part of this conversation because our work really does depend mostly on partnerships like the one that we have with Literacy Chicago, and then to be able to support our employer partners, getting our people placed and trained into really like significant career pathways, or what we call good jobs. So thank you.
Sure. So I will toss this out there and you guys can answer this together or separately, however you feel like you want to do this. How did you guys, Rich, how did you come across Sheryl? How did you find Unite? Was this something that was already part of your organization, or did you just bump into her on the subway and said, wow, she's got a great personality, I need to work with this woman?
Well, I guess one thing I want to emphasize in this whole conversation is building relationships and working with fellow partners. I heard of Sheryl through another organization that referred us to have a conversation. So I believe, Sheryl, you reached out to Becky Raymond, that you needed some assistance with some programmings as you just begin this whole initiative within the past few months from when we actually met. Yeah. So that's how we met. But Sheryl, I'm not sure if you want to elaborate on why. Yeah,
let me expand on that for sure, because so I started my role with we call ourselves UHCHI as our acronym, and so in July of 21, you know, we're still in the pandemic, trying to kind of figure out our lives, right? And so we were one of the few organizations that was actually doing in-person training. And I had just started my new executive director role with our organization. Look, I was a team of one for this new organization. Okay, the first, and so so I reached out to Literacy Works and said, hey, listen, you know what? I found that I need someone to help me with some literacy challenges that I'm experiencing, right? And so the person, her name is Betsy Rubin. Betsy Rubin has since retired from the world of literacy, but she says, you know what, check in with Becky Raymond. So at the time it was Northside Literacy Coalition. And so Becky said, you know what, check in with Literacy Chicago. And I said, okay. And so Rich ended up connecting me to Joanne, and me and Joanne just like our lives exploded. I think we were reborn in that moment, because they had what we needed. As a new organization in the workforce development sector, the first your first hires are going to be your technical skills instructors, right? And oftentimes they don't come from a background of education or teaching, right? They teach on the job essentially. And so a really big part of what I was realizing is we have to be able to evaluate people's education levels, but also trying to kind of get beneath the surface, I would say, to see where people were coming in. And what I realized is I had a gentleman that had been in the industry of culinary working at the Sheridan Grand for 15 years. And it took him 2 hours to complete our application. And it wasn't that hard for me, right? But I can read and I can do math. But I said, tell me what your struggles are. And so after he said, you know, he's at a much bigger story, but after realizing that we had more of that within our pool of people, I reached out to Rich, and they just started working with us right away. And so they have become an integral part of our programming. I'll stop there, but that's how I found them. And they've been a part of our work ever since.
Good. And this, I mean, one of the, again, what you just said, I'm hearing, and I'm also going to reiterate this, even for the community colleges on the CTE side of things. When your employers reach out and say, we have this need, it may not be like you said, Sheryl, it wasn't the first person you touched. It was, oh, talk to this one. Well, she's not right either, but you need to talk to this one. So there may be a referral process within it. So it may not be that very first person, but working together and collaborating is helpful and useful because eventually you can get to the person that you need. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I don't call it luck, right? I call it like a really amazing synergy. And, you know, Rich happened to be ready to like do more work in the workforce development world. And they had a resource that we needed. They just also happened to be amazing people, right? And so now that we are working so deeply with Literacy Chicago, now when we have people that come in, we actually do reverse referrals, right? So now that we're finding people that are coming into our network that need additional supports, now we're like, hey, you know what? We've got somebody that we think would be really great, but they need some more like training with ESL, right? Like they might need training with significant numeracy. Like we've got people that have gone through their training with us with this dyslexia, right? And here's the thing. People do not generally disclose that they have these challenges. Okay. So we find it out by way of their grades and how they're performing within our training. So our training that we provide is an 8-week intensive boot camp. We are housed out of the McCormick Place in Chicago at the East Lake Center. And it's very intensive. It's a 5-day-a-week program. And we have people that are coming out on the other side of this thing and they're just kind of like, whoo, right? Like wiping their brow because it's a lot of work. Like it's 5 days a week. It's pretty much 8 hours a day. And how this has actually developed is Rich provided us with a tutor so Brandon Driver was our tutor. He actually created a bridging, if you would, in order for our apprentices to be able to receive tutoring twice a week. And it's helped tremendously. Like it's called extra seasoning because we are a culinary program. And what it's done is it's helped to reduce the anxiety that our apprentices have, because a lot of times, you know, they haven't been exposed to formal education. Some of them might have started formal education programs. Some of them have gone to culinary school and didn't really get through the whole process. But when you've been out of school for 20 years and you have to go and become kind of reacclimated to a classroom setting, but maybe you left the other program that you were in because it was too hard and scary. So working with Literacy Chicago has given our people a place to learn and to not feel judged. And we'll forever be grateful for that.
Fabulous. So I'm looking at the list of questions I sent you. I'm trying to decide which one to hit you with next. Okay. So what would you say is the biggest challenge working with ICAPS students? And either Rich
Mm.
getting them into a program like Cheryl's, or Sheryl, once you have them in your program, what's the biggest challenge working with those students?
Okay, Rich, you
I
want to go?
think, yeah, just like many of us on this call, I mean, there's life barriers that are involved. There's transportation, there's family issues. It's working with them and building a relationship with them. I know one thing with UHCHI and Cheryl's team, you know, once you join her program, you're the stepchild you didn't want. You're in the family forever. And so I think that's really important for a lot of our students to work through their barriers. And, you know, we're trying to provide ancillary services to them as well as needed. If it's language barriers, or if it's other state assistance, we try and help them out as well. But yeah, I think these students are unique in what they want to do. They're dedicated. They know this is an opportunity for them, and it's a career path that many may have not had the opportunity to take in the past. So I think it's really important that we support our students. They're dedicated. They have their own family issues that we try and help them through if they become a barrier during the 8-week program.
Yeah, that's real. I mean, I think that one of the biggest barriers that we experience is the lack of knowledge about the person that we're dealing with, right? Like, I think that, you know, Rich kind of alluded to that. People oftentimes don't disclose that they have learning challenges.
Right.
Okay. And so we don't know that. So as a part of our evaluation process to get people into our program, our apprentices do, or our applicants do go through they take the CASAS, okay, the CASAS assessment. And so we get a chance to kind of get a little bit from that, but we don't get to see what the really big parts of it. A part of the application is to ask people, do you have a place where you can study and do your homework and do these kind of things? That's, you know, that's a consistent space to do this. So I think a lot of our challenges that we experience are the lack of disclosure from our applicants. But I think that people that have literacy and numeracy challenges, they live in the dark, okay? They are embarrassed and they don't always want to disclose that. And so they make a lot of adjustments in their lives to continue to be productive citizens, if you would. And, you know, once we get beneath the surface and get to see people for, you know, with whatever the challenges that they're facing, and we can really then start to dig into that. Okay. Literacy Chicago has helped us to unpack so much. And it's not always a learning difficulty, right? Like, it's all sometimes, like, I want to share a quick brief story about a young lady named Suzanne that came into our second cohort. She had been working at the Marriott Marquis for 3 years. She was new to the United States, new to Chicago from China. Okay. And she really struggled with, when she came in to apply for our program, her English was very rough around, like, she could speak, she could get it, but she also depended a lot on some of her friends and other people around her to help her with her communication. She started going, this girl, let me tell you something, this young lady was at every tutoring session. They provided us with amazing tutors. She was doing tutoring online as well. And she had made such progress during our just 8 weeks, okay, that she was able to actually she was our keynote apprentice speaker at their milestone ceremony at the end of their 8 weeks. And that was 2 years ago, I still share her written speech with whoever that I can, because she has been such a superstar for our work. But we couldn't have done that work without Literacy Chicago helping her along. Suzanne is like the epitome of what a good partnership can look like and what it should look like if you got people providing these supports at different levels. And I'm a little choked up because I'm so proud of her. So listen, here's the other part of why this makes sense, how this benefits our employers. Suzanne is now like, so not only is she like an ambassador for UHCHI and an ambassador for Literacy Chicago, she has now gone back to her employer with a higher sense of self-confidence. She's able to communicate in a different way. She comes back and she shares her story. And so she encourages other people to take advantage of these services and this opportunity. So she's now gone back to work as a stronger employee. I mean, it happens on so many levels. She actually referred one of her, somebody from her community to our program that has now completed the program and is now working at the property that she's working at. So it's just it's a whole system that really makes sense. And I'm just grateful for it.
So you kind of already answered this, but I'll ask it and maybe you can give us an additional answer. So so the people on the call that are struggling to get employers on board with this, helping employers understand the benefits of it, what advice would you give to those programs? What do they need to tell their employers to get the buy-in that they need, that Bridges and ICAPS are beneficial to the employer?
You know, I think that what we do is we talk about it to the employer. So as a part of our work, we actually provide and we let our employers know, look, we're here to provide coaching services and ongoing, like continuing supportive services for the people that we place with you, not because the people are broken. Okay. It's important to indicate that. So I actually have a person, the director of human resources at the Fairmont, that said, hey, you know, she reached out because I've talked about the services that we can offer them and that we provide in-house. She reached out. She's like, you know what? I have an employee that has dyslexia. Can I have them to work with you to get some additional supportive services? Great employee, but they needed something. And so the person finally disclosed that to their employer as to why they were struggling. And so I think that the other part, Angela, is employers have no idea how to get to these kinds of services, right? They just know that they have an employee that's struggling. And so I think that if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our employer partners by also letting them see that we have something that you don't have to pay for, or if you want to, you can support this organization by supporting it financially. But really, at the end of the day, we have something that can help you to build your employees. They could even bake it into professional development, right? So that's what I would say. Like for people, you know, let your employer partners know that you can support the building of their staff or, you know, their employees by way of providing these supportive services.
Okay. Good. Mm-hmm. So there was a question that came in. So, and this, Rich, may be more of a question for you. What industry credential are students getting through this program, through this ICAPS?
Well, actually, I'm going to have Sheryl explain that as well.
Okay.
There's a few different items that the students receive at the end of the programming, but I think the biggest thing is that they're at the end they're considered chef de parties. And you know, what's wonderful about this program is that, you know, it is an apprenticeship program. So once they go through the 8-week training, you know, Sheryl's team and with her connections and employers, you know, there's job placement abilities. And, you know, one thing I do like about this program is that, Sheryl, if I misstate, please stop me. But, you know, it's opportunities for students to have a position in a restaurant or in a field that provides benefits. For many, they never had the opportunity to have health insurance and so forth. So it's life-changing. I think it's really incredible in regards to, you know, it's an intensive program. It's quick. You know, we provide as an organization the contextualized curriculum that pairs with what they're learning in-house with the chefs. But it is incredible in regards to the outcomes that these students have had. So, you know, I know there's more. I just don't have in front of me the official credential name. So Sheryl, I'm not sure if you want to explain that a little bit further, but there
Yeah,
are some statuses that the student receives at the end of the program.
absolutely. Thanks, Rich. No problem. So, in order for us to be a U.S. Department of Labor certified apprenticeship, we do have to have stackable credentials. And so we don't consider it a credential. We just consider the first step being the completion of our 8-week related training instruction, which is, as I mentioned earlier, which is very intensive. And so from there, we have our apprentices to complete what's called the AHLEI, which is an industry recognized credential. It's for the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute. And what that does is it gives the apprentices the opportunity to understand what it means to work within the hotel or hospitality and tourism sector. So they get tested and they learn, but they kind of get this assessment to understand what it means to actually be a line cook and to be a part of a team. And so they do that, and then they get their serve safe, of course, and so we're considered a non-traditional trade. So our apprentices, after they've been on the job for a certain period of time, we're a competency-based apprenticeship though, so we're not an hours-based apprenticeship. And so our chefs go in at two points during the first 1,000 hours of our apprentices being on the job. They go in at the 500 hour point to assess their competencies and to see how the apprentices are performing on the jobs as it relates to skills, but also their abilities to kind of integrate themselves within the community. But our chefs also go in at a second point at about the 1,000 hour mark to see how the apprentices are performing. Again, that's when we do the second evaluation. Within our guidelines, our apprentices do have up to 1,000 hours to complete, or their National Journey Worker credential. So our apprentices walk away with multiple credentials, but it may not seem like a lot of time, but it's a lot of work, and I think the biggest thing that we take away from this, as well as the apprentices, oftentimes, as I mentioned earlier, they may have some starts and stops in their education. But I think that the pride comes in when they get a chance to go into a career pathway. Like Rich mentioned, we're born out of the union. So the people that come into our program after they've been on the job for about 100 days, I believe it is, they become members of Unite Here Local 1 Union. And they receive a full set of benefits through Blue Cross Blue Shield. They will eventually, I think after a year, start to receive pensions. So they get about like $500 a month towards a pension. I mean, it's really great jobs. Here's the other part. Our industry likes to hire from within. They want to promote from within. And so I talk about that a lot as we're onboarding folks. And where an apprenticeship is an amazing thing, I don't think that it has to be the end all be all, because, we're a new partner with Loyola University, Aramark there. And they just actually hired one of our apprentices to work there as a supervisor. And I said, hey, listen, go do this work, do well, and then think about going back to school. She's been talking about wanting to go back to school. Why not work and go to school at Loyola, where you're on campus? Like, make the whole thing make sense for yourself, So they get stackable credentials, but there's so many other benefits that can come along. Our people just need coaching on how to move through the system, is what I think.
Cool. Very good. We could stay, I think, and talk to you and pick your brains for like the entire rest of the day. But we are at 10 o'clock, and I do want to,
Okay.
keep everybody's, time appropriate as it is. Thank you both for coming on. This has been great. One of the questions that did come into the chat, is there a document that describes this amazing pathway? Other than your ICAPS proposal, I don't know that I have one. Oh, but I do have your flow chart. Haha. See, flow charts are handy. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I have to do a flow chart for proposal. Let me take a look at that. Rich, we may come back to you and say, hey, can we build this out a little bit more? What does this look like? So Val, you're the one that asked that question. I'll see what I can find out for you. But again, that's
Yeah,
part of
if
what
I could
today is
add one thing
about.
real quick, what's important is that this relationship, that it's ever evolving. So we rely on each other to listen to each other, and what needs to change and what needs to be enhanced. So if I do need to update that flow chart, because that's been a year now since I've done it, I'll be happy to. But that's the wonderful thing about this relationship, is that it's not one-sided. We listen to the students, we listen to each other to make the right to provide the right options for our students.
Fabulous. Wonderful.
So beautiful.
All right. So again, thank you both for joining us, being willing to join us and sharing, having the amazing energy you have at 7:30 in the morning. I would still need like 5 more cups of coffee, and I'm not a coffee drinker, but yeah.